So to say that again, what's Amarillo, Texas?
It's the Austin of the Panhandle, from what I saw.
It's kind of true, man. It really
Now
is.
everybody's gonna be mad at me.
Well,
Darren
it's
and Russell and them are gonna yell at me.
Yeah, aren't like
well,
75% of our listeners like down in Amarillo or
probably.
whatever the hell it is.
Well, it is
They're
probably
up
the
in
most liberal city in the Panhandle. It has the
seven-
most. The population of liberals is probably the highest because it's a city. There's the only
70
only big city in the whole area.
75% of our listeners are north of there. What do you? How do you say it? Dumas.
Dumas.
Yeah,
Dumbass.
up in the that's getting up into the prairie, man. That's getting into the prairie dog country,
I think
grasslands.
grasslands.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I bet it's awesome up there.
Sigh.
It's all
I
right.
can't complain.
Yeah.
Just
I'm
windy,
about to-
man. We like there's a RV park we like to stay up there out by the Loves. And it's pretty nice. It's built up and they've got a lot of amenities or whatever. Man, I tell you what, it's always like 40-mile-per-hour winds, like all the
Oh,
time.
yeah, one of the windier cities in the U.S. for sure. There's a Love's there in Amarillo now.
Oh, is there
Not
this
a
one?
Love's,
The one
a
that we were,
Buc-ee's. A Buc-ee's. I said Love's.
well, I
a
don't use
Buc-ee's.
Buc-ee's because half those Buc-ee's don't allow us to pull our trailers in there.
Oh, really? Huh. That's weird.
Something with the Buc-ee's out west, man. There's and I think there's a lot of them that allow you to, but I forget where we were. But we ran into a couple of them where they were like, no trucks and trailers, please. It was all, and the place was massive. I mean, it's a Buc-ee's, dude. It's like
I was
it's
about to say
huge.
that's wild. If anything is built to bring in large vehicles, like it's a
Yeah.
Buc-ee's.
Yep.
Because
You would think- and you know what? It was surprising because it was like somewhere in Texas or Oklahoma or something like that. So it wasn't like some blue liberal state. It was like, wow, I was actually kind of surprised that no trucks were allowed here.
That's weird.
I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
I'll check that out for you. I'm going up there tomorrow, so I'll check that out for you. That's the first negative thing I've heard about a Buc-ee's ever.
Yeah, I think because we had never, so I'd obviously gone to one years ago, and then when we were pulling the trailer once, we're like, hey, let's pull through there. And this is back when I had a gasser, and it specifically said no trucks and trailers. And then I think so. I just assumed all Buc-ee's were like that, and I think it was Josh a couple of years ago was like, no, you pull trucks and trailers through Buc-ee's. So now when I see one, I check, and I think most of the ones I've seen are they don't have any prohibitions or anything. But yeah, man, it's that one particular one, and I think I may have seen like one or two others out west.
I think the one that's on I-95 that's just south of the South Carolina state line. We stopped there twice now, and I want to recall there was RVs, people pulling through the RVs, through the pumps.
You would
and
think.
stuff. Yeah.
Maybe it's just one particular. Maybe
According
just
to
one particular
Grok.
one that we were at.
According to Grok, yes, you can pull your RV into the Buc-ee's in Amarillo, Texas, located at 9900 East Interstate 40. This location is RV friendly for stopping and for refuel, and it goes on and on, but you just can't park there overnight.
Yeah, which makes sense.
So
Buc-ee's is so counterintuitive to the whole refilling and everything anyway. Not, I shouldn't say counterintuitive. It's counterproductive because the whole point is for me to pull up, put diesel in my truck, and get back on the road, right? Because every minute you're in there is a mile down the road. Problem is you'll go into Buc-ee's and then 2.5 hours later, you're coming out of Buc-ee's with, a whole, 2 handfuls of Walmart crap that you bought. You could stay in there forever. And so it's like
you're coming out of there with t-shirts, with maybe
stuff that you never knew you needed.
Yeah. Maybe a button down,
a cutting board,
yeah, exactly. And some Buc-ee's nuts.
and like
dude, their brisket breakfast burritos, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
They got that business model down, dude. Because Roger hit it on the head. It's like guys just want to stop, refuel, maybe go to the bathroom, get a cup of cheap, nasty coffee, and get on the road. No. Because half the time, or over half, if you're traveling on an interstate, unless you're a trucker, you got business, you're with your wife and your family, and your wife's going to want to shop at Buc-ee's because number one, they got clean private restrooms, super clean, and it's like a Target. It's like you guys said, you can get a wall hanging made out of horseshoes, and cotton, and they figured that's a great business model. And a lot of the smaller gas stations here, at least here, are using that Buc-ee's model. They'll have a section of the place that has unique, quirky, decent gifts like that hanging on Josh's wall back there. The head.
the elk or what is that?
That's a white-tailed deer.
I can't see. Same difference.
Yes, yeah, elk and white-tailed deer, exactly the same.
From the skeleton and the horns, whatever, same difference. Dude.
Oh, good grief. No, absolutely. I never understood it going family vacations. Not that we took a lot of them, but when we did, man, when dad was driving, we pulled into the gas station, and dude, if you didn't have to go to the bathroom, you better go try, because you don't know when dad was stopping again, and he probably wasn't going to stop until it was like a quarter tank. Man, if he filled up, he filled up, got coffee, and it was like, dude, it might be 4 more hours before you stop again. Right. Or unless mom's like, mom makes him stop. But other than that, now I get it, because I'm the same way. Every minute that I am not driving down the highway, that is another minute longer that I am going to be driving
Yeah.
in the car. It's like, no, we're on the road. We're getting there. We're not stopping.
Well, because like most of us, we probably do 99% of the driving. So it's like, yeah, I want to hurry up and get off the road or whatever. But it's crazy because, especially like in the mornings when we're traveling with the travel trailer, like we really do live off those places in the morning, because that's where I eat. I mean, dinner we cook in the trailer or whatever. So you start to learn, hey man, in the morning, like we have a lot of the Mavericks out here, so I tend to like Mavericks because you go in there and they've got like the potato and egg burrito or whatever. But you start to learn what they have, and it's like, hey, I hit a Love's after that for lunch because they usually have a Chester's inside of Love's. I can go get some quick chicken tenders or whatever. But it really does like we've gotten to the point now where we drive back east and back out west. I would say that probably 80% of the places that we hit are the exact same every single time that we go.
So you're the chicken connoisseur. How does Chester's rank in the?
It's horrible, dude. It's horrible. But when you look at when you look at where you can stop, and so we stop at a lot of Love's because it's just like anything else. You get your little loyalty card and whatever else, but and Love's, the layout is the same everywhere you go. It's very easy to pull in, very easy to pull out, and they'll usually have sometimes they'll have a Subway. There's a couple, but I think actually the one in Amarillo has a Wendy's, which I think it's one of the only ones that has a Wendy's next to it. But most of them have a Chester's chicken in there. So you go in there and you grab the chicken tenders. But of all the chicken places that you could go eat, it is like the last place I would go. I mean, I would never eat Chester's outside of I'm traveling, and that's my option, or not even option. It's like the only thing there. I would never eat there.
You ever eat an Allsup's burrito or chimichanga ever?
No.
Oh, you got to try it. You got to try it. And I'm not saying because it's so good. No, but it's like the Chester's. Get it. And while you're eating it, you're like, yeah, it's pretty good. But man, it's like eating Taco Bell. It's Allsup's are. Have y'all ever been to an Allsup's?
I've seen them around. Okay. I don't know. We've actually stopped at one, but I've seen a bunch of them around.
I think that's strictly a Texas thing. I think
it might be.
Yeah.
Are they it sounds like, are they the Subway of taco shop?
No. Allsup's is like a gas station. It's
okay.
Like a 7-Eleven, for Texas. Gotcha. But they always have like that hot food, with the glass, and they'll have some chicken tenders that look like they've been in there for a week roasting under that heat lamp, and then some janky fried cheese and these. But the burritos,
that's the Chester's.
Yeah, okay.
That's the Chester's chicken, right? It's like the chicken tenders have been under that bake oven for so long that there's no crisp left to it. Like they literally have just dried off dude, you're just like, but it's a little bit better than leather. I mean, it's like you eat it and it's like, okay, it's not bad, but if I had that, and if I had a Popeyes and a Bojangles and a Cane's, I'm like Chester's is coming in dead last, right? I wouldn't go. There's no way I would go there. But
and you said you would go to Bojangles before Chick-fil-A.
Oh, dude, I'm a huge Bojangles fan, man. That's my jam.
So is it Popeyes?
But see, with Bojangles, well, you know what the thing with Bojangles is, they always have like your cheddar bow biscuit or something like that. So it's not even necessarily about the chicken, but it's the it's the other things that they have. I'm like, man, I could scarf down 3 or 4 of those cheddar bow biscuits.
Roger getting that bow box.
Hell yeah, man.
So which one's better, Chick-fil-A or Chester's?
Oh, Chick-fil-A by a mile.
Okay. All right.
Is it just me, or did the Popeyes biscuits get smaller? Because I thought they used to be bigger, but then again, when Popeyes first kind of hit the scene, I was a little kid. So those biscuits, I'm sure, have they gotten smaller, or that just me?
I don't know. I don't eat trash chicken.
Well, it's the biscuits. It's not the chicken.
I don't go to that trash chicken place.
You know what? We're actually opening up a Bojangles out here. So we've had a Popeyes, which has got to be one of the worst Popeyes in America, which breaks my heart because Popeyes is one of my favorite. And then we've had a Chick-fil-A, and I think Bojangles comes here like in the next 3 or 4 months. So it's about to be game time, man. You have to start wearing your gang chicken colors or something like that around town.
Well, it's a disappointing food story for today since we're on the food subject. There's this place here in Lubbock, and it's a pretty good sandwich and salad place, But when you go in there, it's all old ladies, right? It's an old lady place to go. And they have cakes and pies and all this stuff fresh baked.
Because I make sandwiches, of course.
So I go in there today, and wife and I had lunch, and I swear the food was not as good. It's like they're obviously under new management. The food wasn't as good. And it's like, man, cross that one off the list. That sucks, man. You find a good restaurant you like that's consistent, and then the food turns to crap. It's a real disappointment, man, especially in a town like this. I mean, I don't live in fancy pants, Apache Junction where you got your pick. But, places like this, decent, reliable places are, not a dime a dozen. They're rare.
What's sad is we're running those places out, though. The problem is, like my town, we just opened up a BJ's. We have become so... One, we have no higher end dining here. Your higher end dining is going to be your Olive Garden, your BJ's, whatever. But everything's just like, man, if we have another burger joint or pizza joint, like how many of them can you actually have in a small town? And the problem is these chains come in and they drive out all the mom and pop, places that, it's like your hole in the wall dining and this and that, and some stuff that you see on some TV shows, but those places are all gone, man. We've all gone, all chain restaurant type out here.
Yeah, well, I think that's the that's the story of a lot of places with
That's a good point.
I mean, not only just restaurants, any mom and pop stuff. I mean, you start bringing in Walmart, Target, Amazon, stuff that just that kills those businesses. I do have to I do have to put Luke on the carpet here though. With what, maybe that place is still good because Luke eats Subway. Luke thinks Subway is good. Therefore, I hereby question all of his food, choices. So look, all right. So check this out. So you have Jersey Mike's, Jimmy John's, Firehouse Subs, and Subway. They're all in the same strip mall. You pull in, which one are you going to?
That depends. What
and money is not an object, because that's for me, that's a decision maker, right? Is the money. So money is not an object.
So let me ask, am I on the road? Am I on the road working?
Yes.
I go to Subway. If I'm here and I have a hankering for a sandwich, I'm going to Firehouse Subs. I know this is where my OCD kicks in. I am a fan of consistency and doing the same thing over, because I know Subway, no matter where I go, is going to be the same, most likely 99% of the time. Now, and it's part of my ritual, dude. When I'm on the road, if it's sandwich night, I'm going to Subway. So it has nothing to do with how good or bad it is. It's just I got used to it, and that's what I do now. But yes, overall, I will acknowledge I'm not a huge fan of Jersey Mike's. I just don't. It's not for me. But I've only had it once. So, but as far as quality, yeah, definitely, it's going to be for me. Firehouse Subs is number one. Number two is what was the other one? Jersey Mike's. Jimmy John's. Number two is Jimmy John's.
Jimmy John's is good too.
And
I like Jimmy John's.
Three is I mean, Subway's just not even real. It's like McDonald's. It's not good. It's not. I admit it. It's not good.
Well, at least you're at least you're standing by.
But there's different levels though, because what you pay at like a Jimmy John's is going to be twice what I pay at a Subway. I mean, you're going to pay more for. I mean, it's just different
Well,
category.
yeah, I mean, you generally pay more for quality.
I'm going to turn over a new leaf though, Josh. I am. Because when I travel to Maryland, especially Maryland, I'm going to start doing Chipotle instead of Subway. Because, dude, Subway is just, it's not only is it not that good, it's not good for you. It's horrible for you. That bread is so bad. You know, the cheese is not real. The meat is basically just steakums. So the meatballs, God knows what that is. So yeah,
it's probably the IKEA horse on the meatballs. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember when IKEA got caught? It was like came out. It's like this is horse meat.
Oh yeah,
and their meatballs. That was nuts.
And the Europeans are like, nah, so what?
Yeah, the Europeans are like, what do you? Yeah, what do you mean? That's what Europeans were eating the bark off trees for years and years after both wars.
Take what you can get, man.
Really, whatever. Yeah, that was the whole. No sense of personal space in the chow lines overseas with our European partners. It's like, hey man, they put out Gatorades and they're grabbing 5 and 6 of them, walking out with them. It's like, hey, it's that European. I have to get it right now because I don't know if I'm ever going to get more. You don't want to get up to the front of the line and all the hot chow's gone. It's just that European bread line mentality.
Remember the Russians in Kosovo? Dude, they would come in there with duffel bags and go to the refrigerator and just all those Cokes, everything, and everybody's just looking at them like, are they allowed to do that? And your point, I thought they were just criminals, which they are, but it's also what you said. They're used to deprivation. It's like, they're giving this away. All right, here we go.
Yeah, they don't know when man. They don't know if they're ever going to get more. They got to get it while the getting's good. That's okay though, because I got my hat from them that they left unsecured in their vehicle. So
did you talked about that on the episode, right? Did we talk about the stuff we traded? Yeah, I think we talked about that last time. The stuff we traded.
Yeah, just reference coffee cup.
Yeah.
What's that?
Beirut coffee cup or whatever now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I got the man. I got a Ukrainian. I forget what you call the the big wool furry hats.
Yeah.
Traded him a cot. So what are my cots? some supply sergeant was like, damn shortage X, man. Yeah, I'm missing the cots. A bunch of Ukrainians driving off with them. Like a specialist Brown's like, here you go, man. Take all you want. Yeah, give me that hat. Take all of them you want.
And in the alternate universe, that Ukrainian's got his own podcast going on, talking about how he ripped you off for this American cop.
Yep, 100%.
They took for that dirty ass hat that it probably wasn't even his hat either.
Probably not. You know what's funny? They probably put those cots together and got to the last bar on the end. They were like, this thing is broken. This thing is garbage. It doesn't even work. Not knowing, like, no, man, you need a pry bar. You gotta,
that should be like the PT test. If you can put that last bar together without a pry bar, hey man, you passed. You're good.
You ever get the skin of your finger caught?
Yes.
Putting that in there? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to lose a finger.
If you were the last one to put your cot together and there were no more of those bars to use to get yours on, you're just like, oh man, that sucks. Sucks to be you. There you go, buddy. Enjoy. Yeah. I don't miss that.
Y'all see over in the corner the light fixture and the ceiling fan?
Yeah, when are you going to get those up?
Some stuff.
I'm stimulating the economy on that stuff. I've got a handyman coming over. We're about to move, audience, just in case you don't know. So we got to put our house on the market. So we're getting rid of a couple of janky fans and light fixtures we should have got rid of years ago. Doing some touch-up painting. And I'm looking at the deck out here, right? And I have it on my board over here. I've got my honey-do list of stuff to do. And on there was stain the deck, power wash it and stain it. And those guys come over and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to stimulate the economy. And guys, you're going to do that. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll knock that out. No problem. So yeah, I'm treating myself a little bit there. And they're going to put up the ceiling fan and all that stuff. I hate moving, dude. I think this is the last time I'm ever going to move. So we better pick a good house.
Dude, it's a pain in the ass.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I don't want to move again. We're going to move one more time, at least because this house is too big for just two of us. Once the kids are up and out and gone, we'll move one more time. That and going to require a downstairs master bedroom. I am done with 2-story homes. But dude, that slapped up. I think like 6 or 7 ceiling fans in our house. So it's not hard. It's easy.
You might be surprised because with the wife there, because my whole thing was, yeah, we need a smaller house. She agreed till we started looking at houses that are actually smaller. She's like, this is so small. And I'm like, no, this is perfect. Well, people are going to gather here. I'm like, what people are going to get? What people are going to, well, your family's going to come over. And I'm like, that's a reason to have a smaller house. Our house is too small for gathering. That's it.
Exactly.
No.
You need to get a bigger house, and you need to get that extra 1,000 square feet for the once every 3 years that somebody decides they want to come over and stay at your house for 3 nights.
Exactly. Sleep on an air mattress in the freaking great room. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't need another room.
Nope.
I tell y'all, I think I told Josh, I'll share this with the audience. It was one of the biggest air out of the sales moments when we were looking at houses in Amarillo. So we saw one on Zillow, and it was a barn dominium, right? And it's listed for what we thought we could afford, put it to you that way, at the very top of what we thought we could afford. But the barn space, 6,000 square feet. That's the barn
Holy
space.
cow.
That doesn't include the house. The house is probably, I don't know, 2,000. So it's not huge, but we don't need a huge house, right? And hey, you got that barn, 6,000 square feet. There's a gathering place. So we're like, well, let's go out and look at it. So we go look at it, and there's no realtor there, and it's open. Like it's like there are no door handles. Like it's open. So we're like, oh, this is perfect. So we walk in, it's unfinished. It's completely unfinished. And we're still thinking about that price. And they're going to come finish it for this price. It's like, and it sits on 2 acres too. I'm like, this is perfect. And I was getting all hyped up, and I'm like, what am I going to put in this barn space, And oh my gosh, looks like they're putting an outdoor kitchen here. There's a little wine rack. There's outlets for multiple refrigerators, this is going to be awesome. Then we look at the little flyer they had on the kitchen counter. What was, because nothing is finished. No paint, no toilets, no nothing. It's as is at that price. And the wind just came out of my sails. I was like, dude, to finish this thing out is going to be at least $125,000. Because you're talking about flooring, you're talking about bathrooms, you're talking about cabinetry, and we can't afford it. And my wife was just like, well, maybe we could. I'm like, no, we can't. Dude, to finish a house out, that is expensive, bro. And it was just such a downer, man, because living in that barn dominium would have been awesome. Roger, you could have pulled your RV in there and stayed inside our barn, dude. It would have been awesome. But whatever. Sucks being poor.
Yeah, and that's one of those, you're not a young man anymore. You got all the time in the world. It's like, oh, I'll knock out some price. That's one thing. Is like, especially as you get older, it's just like, man, it's like the ceiling fan thing. Like, yeah, when I was younger and we got our first house, we'd save $100, because it was like $100 per ceiling fan. I'm like, no, I'll put that stuff up myself or whatever. Hey, man, we ain't getting any younger. You get a little bit older, time's worth a little bit more, and you don't have that kind of time to necessarily dedicate to that stuff or want to dedicate to that type of stuff anymore.
Yeah. Not all of us are handymen like Josh,
Oh, dude, I'm probably the least handy of the three of us.
I doubt that.
It's just some things I learned, down the road. But like hanging, ceiling fans, stuff like that's easy. What's crazy is, so one of our listeners who lives up in Northern Virginia, Ryan, he runs his own handyman business. Right. That's how he pays the bills and makes a living. And, Honey Done Home Service. We highlighted him during COVID and stuff like that. I was talking to him. Right. And so I was like, I said, I said, Ryan, this is wild, because you asked me, hey, pick your bad country, right? Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, whatever. It's like, hey, we're going to go X, we're going to go to X. There's, probably going to be bad guys there. Bad things could happen, right? And things could go sideways, and you might not make it home. You're like, okay, sounds great. Let's go. but it's like, hey, I need you to cut a hole right here in the sheetrock, right? Because you're gonna just run this little cable down behind the sheetrock. I just need you to cut a hole in the sheetrock right here. Like I start sweating. Like I'm like, ooh, man, I don't know if I could do that. That's scary. That's scary, right? You're like, it makes no sense whatsoever. But you start talking about stuff like that, it's like, dude, I don't want to mess this up, you know? And you're just like, ooh, I don't want to, I don't want to mess this up because it's I'm gonna bring somebody in to fix it or do it, because stuff like that's just scary. It's like, hey man, you want to go on the X? There's gonna be bad people with guns trying to kill you. Be like, let's go, let's do it. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy when you really think about that distinction, those distinctions.
Well, and you also know your own, you know your own ability. It's like, well, no, I'm not going to pay this guy $500 to come and do this work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do it myself, and I'm going to go out and buy $800 worth of tools that I don't have that I
exactly
need for this job. Then I'm going to screw it up because the hole is going to be too big. And then I'm going to have to buy another piece of drywall. And then I'm going to realize, hey, I don't know how to drywall. And then I'm going to have to hire that guy anyway to come in with my $800 worth of tools that I just bought to redo it.
Dude, I still have, to this day, when we fixed the leak in our bathroom in Maryland, that turned into just a full rip everything out and full bathroom renovation. I had to take out the 1962 original cast iron tub that weighed, as much as a Abrams tank. I had to go buy a bathtub wrench, right, that you put in the drain and you unscrew it. It was like $14. I still have that in my tool and I'm looking at this thing like, I will never use this again, because if I'm ever in that situation again, I'm just hiring a plumber. He'd be like, come in here, this is what I want, tell me how much it's going to cost. Okay, do it. Right.
But the minute you throw that thing away.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The minute you throw it away, you're going to need it, or your neighbor's going to, hey man, you don't happen to have a such and such, dude. You're just like, okay. So it's out in my tool chest.
My next door neighbor he's not even a handyman. Like he's in business. Like he does, I would say construction. He kind of does a little bit of everything for industrial. He has a couple of his own businesses. He has a trucking company, everything. And they moved into this house next door, and it was an absolute, the people were not, they never took care of it, falling apart, literally falling apart. And it's multi-level. So it's like, it was it's part of the safety hazard. So he and his fiance were gonna get married, but they've had to set the marriage, the date back, the marriage date, because dude, I mean, they just got too much work to do on that house. He's doing it all himself. And it's really impressive what he's done. But see, I told him, I was like, man, I wish I had that skill set. But dude, it takes, number one, it takes not a lifetime, but it takes years to get even to a journeyman level of being able to hang drywall, do welding, do cutting, all this stuff. That's a lot of knowledge that you've got to learn. You've got to, apprentice, and then you move up to a journeyman level. I know I'm talking electrician terms, but he does electrical too. He does all of it, plumbing. He does it all. But y'all hit it on the head. He has all the tools. He has all the tools, and man, that's a big part of it. I mean, I wish I had that skill set, but then you got to spend, tens of thousands of dollars on all the tools to be able to do it. So it's like, all kudos to that guy. He listens too, Big Dave. So, but we gave him a grill the other day. That's another thing I was going to say. It's like, when it comes to construction and things like that, or doing stuff, if you need me to move something heavy, that's my job. Do it, making the precise little cut in the wall or whatever, or the precise painting, dude, give that to somebody who knows what they're doing. But if you want to move like a grill down 2 levels through, pea gravel and stuff like that without breaking it, I can do that. I can figure that out. I'll put that thing on my back and, but it was funny because he's redoing his kitchen too, man. Like everything, like blowing it out. And he and his fiance have been cooking for the past year on a grill and a microwave. That's it. This is what they've been doing. So, which is, worst ways to do it, steaks every night. But
Yeah.
I took a look at his grill after I'd moved mine down, and I was like, dude, just take our freaking grill because we're going to sell in the garage sale. Just take it, bro. You can have it. And I had spent like 2 or 3 hours cleaning it up. So it's pretty good shape. But yeah, shout out to him, man. He's they've helped us out a lot.
We've got some really talented listeners, when it comes to the handyman stuff. Mo, that guy can do anything. Like he can build he can build a vehicle, from the frame up in his garage, and then he's doing custom cabinets, right? Custom cabinets.
Great with his hands. Yeah, great with his hands.
And he's like, and I'm talking to him because I even told him, I was like, hey man, I will pay for your plane ticket. You come out to our house. We will shack you up in our guest room for a week. And I need to, in my third garage, in the little, the third garage, it's kind of like the golf cart garage. That's kind of like, my man cave with, well, that's where you keep all the, the lawnmowers and all, all that stuff. I got my wood lathe in there. I was like, I'll buy everything. You just get in there. We'll get in there, all day. I just need you to build me, storage and cabinets and stuff like that. I was like, dude, I'll fly you out here, feed you, like what, everything. He's just looking at it. He's like, dude, this is easy. You can do this. And I was like, I don't think you understand how stupid I am, right? And how bad I am at this. I was like, I cannot do what you do. Dude, I cannot build custom cabinets because if I could build custom cabinets and charge people a lot of money for them, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now, right? To pay bills. Like I was like, dude, I would make more money selling pictures of my feet than building custom cabinets right now because I can't do that.
Mo sent, or Roger sent a picture he put us all in a chat group, and he sent a picture. He's like, Mo, could you do this? It was like these inlaid book cabinets. It was beautiful, and it would really work well in Roger's house. And Mo sends back a picture of something that doesn't look anything. He goes, of course I could do that. Check this out. He sends a picture of like,
no, I think it was Josh. He was looking for like a built-in or something like that.
He sent a picture of like some, not even a built-in, some shelving behind like a bar. And he's like, well, hell yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
Now I know he can, but it was funny. He sent that picture. He's like, dude, that looks nothing like what Josh said.
That dude can do anything with his hands, but he cannot make change out of a $20 bill to save his life. So we all have our little niches, right? Things that we are really, really good at. If I need something built, fixed, tore down, repaired, Mo's the guy I'm gonna call.
Yeah. Yeah. He's incredibly talented with that stuff.
I know Mo listens occasionally. I know Ryan listens. David listens. Does Leaf listen?
Leaf listens every once in a while.
Because
physically, like, can he hear or?
Yeah, bro. Leaf.
I'm just messing. I'm throwing out a little joke for him.
Okay.
Well,
we'll see if he listens because he's going to shoot me a text saying, "Hey, go after yourself."
Well, I'm looking at the reason I ask is because I got something pulled up here that Josh and I were actually talking about. And Roger, I don't know how much you've been tracking this stuff, but I pulled up a little. I don't want to call it research or even show prep because we're so much better when we wing it. But I have Sarah Adams' X page pulled up. Here we go. Yeah,
I had to stop reading that. Dude.
I had
to stop reading it.
I see that Leaf is following her, and to be fair, C3 is following her too. But we got into a little spat, not even a spat, with Sarah Adams the other day, a couple days ago, and she threw out this thing. According to Taliban's internal records, approximately 150 terrorists crossed into the U.S. illegally each month, starting in 2022. We have a serious problem here at home. Waiting months to address is not a solution. And I'm like, you know what? That's additionally an average of 10 to 20 terrorists entered legally each month, majority of whom were members of the Haqqani or network or Al-Qaeda. So all I did is like, could you please post those records? Because I'd love to see that. Is it some kind of, dude, you know what she replied back with? You can reach out to the refugee department and put in a FOIA request, LOL, like laughy face. And I was just like, okay. And I said something, not smart ass, but I said something back like, perhaps you're trying to dunk on a small account. Certainly you could post your own FOIA request results here. We're not enemies, Sarah. Oh, dude. And I got dogpiled on by all of her simps. And Josh has a theory about that. But man, people are just like, that's not her responsibility. You've got a pre 9/11 mindset and all this stuff. And I mean, I'll kick it to Josh, but I mean, the time she's been on the Sean Ryan show, she throws stuff out there. that is pretty amazing. Like the intel is pretty amazing. And if it's finished intel, I mean, I'm impressed. But the little trick to that is to get finished intel and that level of clarity and outlining a network and what their strategic goals and aims are. I'm not saying she's 100% wrong. I'm just saying that takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of network. If it's single source reporting, that's another thing. But we're talking finished intel here. We're talking multiple sources. So where is she getting her intel? She never posts receipts. So I think she's got a grift going on, Josh. I really do. And we can talk more about it. But tell us about what your theory of the grift is, if you want.
I just, she is like, she's like Tim Kennedy, right? Tim Kennedy, for some of you may not know who he is. He's a Green Beret. He's a white soft guy, as we refer to him. And he's got this grift going that he's an expert on everything national security, everything just because he was a Green Beret. And it's like, well, yes, but no, right? And Sarah Adams, she was an analyst. She was an analyst for the agency at one point. That's it, right? Now, I'm not saying that she, not a good analyst. I'm just saying she was an analyst, but she sells herself as, she never said it, but she does it correct. There's been twice that I know of. She did not correct people when they, labeled her a case officer, right? It's like, you are not a case officer. You're an analyst. And I think, her grift is she's blonde haired, white girl who is fawned over by, these accounts, and I meant to respond back to one of them, be like, I hope she sees this, bro. I really hope she sees this. And I was going to see how Teledola and be like, she's not going to date you, bro. Because they came out in mass, to dogpile on C3 and to, come to her defense. So I think that and this goes for some of these other grifters, right? Ashley St. Clair is one of them. Some of these other, Jack Poso's another one. They have a, I forget, Praetorian Guard around them, right? And they have, one layer is, their buddies, and it's, hey man, we got one, right? So their buddies go in and dog paddle on. The next layer are folks that are paid, right? They are paid in one way, shape, or form to act as, the Praetorian Guard for them. And then you have the bots, right? I legitimately believe that a lot of these folks, especially ones really big accounts, really big, high profile folks, they have some paid bots, out there. They have a service out there that they pay for. That's, hey, when this comment on one of my posts or whatever meets this threshold, this algorithm, those bots are initiated and they come in and just start posting nonsense, right? They start posting gobbledygook, and I think she's the same way, right? In her comment, it's just, well, you can just FOIA the request. It's like, well, if I can FOIA your sources, then they're really not your sources, are they? Right? It goes back to where is she getting her info from? And you said it, because she keeps saying, well, it's only a matter of time before the next attack. And you're like, well, yeah, it's only a matter of time, right? After the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, it was only a matter of time before they attacked those, trying to attack those buildings again. Well, yeah, you're right. It's only a matter of time. It might be 200 years from now. 200 years from now, they'd be like, see, Sarah was right, but there's just enough. And what gets me is there's just enough specificity and granularity in her comments and her posts, but it's not enough to really pin her down on something and start, trying to dissect it and say, okay, what about this? What about that? And when you do question her, it's, man, you get the wrath of the bots. And you watch those some accounts, is as soon as you question it, within 5 minutes, those accounts start showing up. That is not natural. That is 100% not natural, not organic.
Yeah, because they're full of shit. I mean, they're full of shit. It's like, hey, I got it. You're an analyst or, an SF guy. My main problem with all of them is because we can all, we have deductive reasoning and logic and, our own personal experience and institutional learning, yada, yada, yada. The problem that I have with a lot of them, and here's where the grift really comes in is, and I think with Kennedy, because I wasn't aware of his like latest quote unquote scandal or whatever, but, their playbook right now is they just don't correct people. They lead people on to assume they did more than what they did. They were somebody that they weren't. They're an expert in something they have no experience in, and they won't go back and correct them. Right. So it's like the case officer thing, right? It's like, hey, no, I wasn't a case officer. They won't say anything to it. And then what happens is when you get, folks like us that come in that, hey, we don't know a whole lot about a whole lot of things, but we've got a very specific skill set that I think we've got some pretty deep knowledge in. And they know that off the top of their head, dude. They as soon as they see like, this guy or gal probably knows what the hell they're talking about. So it's a disengage, right? It's to come back with something witty. And then like Josh said, then a couple of their homies will come in, dogpile on you. And the whole point is it's no different than a Google search, right? It's to suppress that comment, because Josh can reply to one or two posts, 3 or 4 posts. You can't sit there and fight them all off. Okay. It's like Reddit. Heaven forbid you go on Reddit and go on one of those liberal channels and post something like pro-Trump, because within 5 minutes, you're going to have 5,000 downvotes and 150 comments, and you just can't possibly go through and defend them all. So what do? F that chick. And we just move on. And that's exactly what they want. Right. And so they are, the people that follow them, are ones who are enamored with their position because they do something else. They're not in this line of work. It's your carpenter, your local carpenter or somebody who works at the Home Depot or whatever. And I'm not saying, lower skill set, it's different skill set that doesn't touch this side of the world. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, she's agency. Okay. And a lot of people don't understand that the agency is just like a lot of other organizations where, there are a lot of jobs inside the agency, right? We all assume that, the whole James Bond thing and whatever, spy versus spy, but that's a very small portion of that. It's like being the FBI, I'm in the FBI. So, okay. So, what are you, what do you actually do there? So they see that, they're enamored by it and they'll come defend it. But at the end of the day, you make a claim like that, that's that specific, which one I think is bullshit anyway, but you come out with something that's specific, then you will either do one of two things. Either one, you'll post the receipts, or you better have a history or a track record of being pretty daggum spot on. Hey, I've got sources that I need to protect. But, I haven't gone through and pulled all the threads on her account, but I never get that feeling of like, well, you just have assets that you need to protect. One, she doesn't have assets she needs to protect because she was an analyst and not a case officer, but we'll just throw that to the side. She doesn't have that specificity on enough topics to be like, okay, she actually knows some folks and she's getting some info on, from the inside or behind the scenes, and it goes back to, it's no different than the soothsayer, or, you go and get your palm read and this, Josh, you're going to die. Well, no shit, I'm going to die. Is that tomorrow? Is that next week? Is that next? I told everybody he was going to die. Right. So you make these broad claims with a little bit of, hey, do you think terrorists have made it in from Afghanistan? Yeah, absolutely. I'd say yes. Do you think a couple of them have been Haqqani? Probably. You'd probably say a couple, that are loosely associated with Haqqanis. I mean, Jalaluddin ain't coming across the border, right? But you probably got a couple folks that are loosely associated with them that have made it across. Yeah. Any one of us three can put that out there. Okay. But, it's another thing to be like, hey, I know 15 folks who were funded by such and such came across this port of entry and they came through from January to March. Now you get to the point where, okay, well, she obviously has some on the inside. And then the other side of that is with that, why are you posting that info? Because something like that, DHS would have access to, CBP would have access to. There are a lot of data sources that like, okay, that would come out somewhere, especially with this new administration. I guarantee that stuff would come out, and it's just not. So dude, I think she's full of shit. And the minute you called her out on it, it's like, oh, I'm going to throw something witty and look over here and then let all of her peeps, sit there and dogpile on you.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything you guys said. CIA analyst, and she was in Benghazi at the time of the 2012 attacks. And one of the things she's had like Chris Peranto, she's I don't know. She has a connection with him and a couple of the other guys that were, GRS contractors there at the time. And, in these movies, I think Tom Satterley said it. Because they were asking him about the Black Hawk Down movie, the one that came out in was 2001, whenever it came out. And he was like, well, some of those characters in that movie are an amalgamation of like 2 or 3 or 4 different dudes. Like, there was a master sergeant, or I don't know what his rank was at the time, but there was a Hooten there, Hoot, but some of the things he did and said, other guys said, like some of the stuff he said, Tom Satterley said, or did, or whatever during the Battle of the Black Sea there. And in the movie Benghazi, or 13 Hours, that CIA case officer with the British accent, that was the amalgamation of 2 or 3 different people, she being one of those people. So that's kind of the lore of who she is, oh, well, she was that chick in the movie. That's the lore. That's one of the reasons she doesn't correct anybody, so she's taken that Benghazi experience and she's, and again, it's like some of the stuff she says, Roger encapsulated it pretty good. It's like some of the stuff she says, it's like, yeah, that's my analysis as well, about how Al-Qaeda, the lines between Al-Qaeda and ISIS, or the Islamic State, not ISIS, but the Islamic State, are kind of blurring now. And I think I've said this on platform a few times. We're kind of seeing these radical Islamic terrorist organizations, whatever you want to call them. We're kind of seeing a mirror now, kind of the Northern Irish, or what was it? The
IRA.
IRA, yeah. They're mirroring that IRA, whereas in the past, there was always communication. All these cells answered to one particular, that's the Islamic terrorist way of doing it, and you name your terrorist group, but the IRA was different. The cells were completely independent. So if there was an attack in London, one cell might have done it, another cell would know nothing about it. But it was any attack that happened, they were such on the same page that it was okay. It was a multicellular structure, which was very unique. I mean, we learned about that in 1997 when we went through the course. It's like IRA is different than everybody else because, it's all ideological driven. They all understand the goals. They all understand the aims, and every attack is okay. Now, that's one of the things that she's not making the IRA connection, but she's saying basically, if you dissect what she's saying with Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, is that it's becoming multicellular like that. And you saw it on January 1st in the attack in New Orleans, right? That's completely Islamic State. That's completely in line with Al-Qaeda. It's multicellular. So it's the inspiration behind it, and now with the internet, it's easier to run a multicellular thing like that. It's harder to have one single leader though. That's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
And that's what's, it's interesting that the way that tide is turning, she's hitting on that. I have to say, I agree with that. That does not mean that all of her information is accurate. I could make up a bunch of stuff about a guy I talked to, in Afghanistan or whatever, who told me this to back up my analysis. I just think she's doing crappy intel. And to what end? And somebody in the comments said it. To what end? I'll tell you what end it is. It's like one dude in the comments said, well, if you just buy her book, you'll understand. It's like, oh, okay, now I get it. And I actually went to Barnes & Noble today and looked around for her books. Not in there. Of course, it's Barnes & Noble, bunch of commies. But I wonder if her books are, well referenced, so on and so forth. I don't know. It's just interesting. And here's another thing, one more thing I know you want to talk, Josh. I know you got stuff to say. What's interesting is after 9/11, you guys remember, it was like, yes, we were fearing an attack, like a dirty bomb attack or an anthrax attack, something. But we all knew that the way Al-Qaeda worked is very Middle Eastern type mindset of, if we do an attack, because I remember thinking, it's like, well, why not just get a bunch of guys to go into malls at the same time and shoot them all up? Well, that's not seen back then. That was not seen as spectacular attack as 9/11. And in the Arab mindset, it's all about, well, if you do a smaller attack than that shows weakness. If you do a smaller attack than 9/11, that shows weakness. So it's like, if they're going to attack again in the United States, it's going to have to be big. Now, in the 24 years that have passed since then, almost 23 and a half, They don't feel that way anymore. 9/11 is ancient history. So yeah, the mall attacks and stuff like that, that shit's back on the table. And that's my analysis. All that is back on the table. You saw it in New Orleans. You see it in Europe. You're seeing it all over the place, dude. It's multicellular and it's a lot. I'll agree. It's dangerous. Is it 9/11 dangerous? No, but it's definitely sowing fear and panic. A movie called Siege with Bruce Willis back in the day, that's what you're looking at. Remember that movie, Josh? Did you ever see Siege?
Siege? I don't know.
It's like 90s.
I was thinking Steven Seagal in The Siege. Was it Bruce Willis?
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Take it away.
Yeah. No, I was saying you actually brought this up last night when we were talking. She was an analyst in Benghazi, and you had a very good point. If she was such a great analyst and she was on top of her game, she didn't see the attack in Benghazi coming. Or rather, if she did see the attack coming, because she's such a great analyst, right? She's got all these sources in this big network. Well, she didn't warn anybody. She didn't tell anybody. So it's not there are good people in the agency, I know, but man, I've come across very few of them, and I've come across a number of folks, as you guys have too. I just haven't. I have not been wholly impressed by any of them. And Bob Chapman, in what was that, December 2009? That's another great example of the quality of quote unquote analyst, right? They didn't see they didn't see coming. Chief of base didn't see coming. What happened. So people see, they hear those three letters and they're like, ooh, it's like, guys, it ain't all that in a bag of chips, man. It's some dude introducing himself as Condor, and guess what, that guy sucks too. Like, he's not very good, like he sucks too, right? So that's my thoughts on Sarah Adams, and I'm going to continue to call her out on her bullshit.
It's a shame that we don't have and maybe that's what we need to do. We need to get our canteeners, right? That needs to be our layers. So, they can start dogpiling for us on these folks or whatever.
Well, that's why I said leaf.
The thing about, that's the thing about with analysts and like Josh and Luke, we've run into good analysts, we've run into bad analysts, and what I at least saw towards the end of my career, and now I've taken it into civilian life, is there was a time period there where, especially during the GWAT years, where analysts were basically historians, right? And I think Josh hit it on the head. It's like, okay, I need some predictive analysis. Okay, I don't need to know what happened yesterday. Okay, Now understand what happened yesterday provides the context and maybe some historical perspective on what might happen tomorrow. But I need to know what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay, and when you look at just obviously, and those are the two biggest examples. You look at Benghazi, and then you look at Fob Chapman. And if you ever read the book about Fob Chapman, I mean, it's like anyone, dude. A 10-level agent would have been like, yeah, this is probably a bad idea. And I'm probably not going to be in this area when this whole thing happens, when it goes down, that type of thing. But, and there were a lot of other mishaps, but, an analyst, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. I mean, they're everywhere. Half our listeners, probably have analysts or work with analysts within their own organization. And you just like, hey, the analyst is generally, I mean, there's a couple different choke points there, because they can only process and really predict things based off of the quality of intel, or based off the intelligence they receive. Okay. And those are from folks like us that are out there, and other folks, and electronic means, and this and that. So, they are largely dependent on the information that they receive as far as what they come out with. But then the other thing, the second part of that is, okay, are you smart enough? Do you have enough experience? And do you just have enough of that gut feeling, or whatever it is, that you can provide some predictive analysis? Hey, this is what's going to happen. Here are some indicators we've seen. Here's some historical context. This is what I'm looking at. So it's no longer, hey, Josh, you're going to die. It's like, Josh, you eating a bag of potato chips every day and drinking a case of Coca-Cola and this and that. Hey, you're probably going to develop diabetes in the next 12 months. And then from then on, you've got 2 to 5 years, right? That's when you get into some predictive analysis using some historical context and some, some other information that goes in to feed that. And I think we just kind of, and maybe it's changed a lot, right? But at least I know when I retired, it seems like a lot of those analysts had just become really historians. And I think any of us can, like, I can sit there and read IRs all day.
I think one of the biggest problem analysts have, and I think we'd all agree on this, is cognitive biases, right? They want, if information comes in that fits a certain picture, they want it to be true so bad that they ignore everything else, and I think that's particularly bad with CIA, because they do have access to a lot of information. And, bringing it back to Benghazi, it's like they should have seen that shit coming. Because I remember chatting with you guys, way back when we didn't even have a text group between the three of us. I'd text Roger, text Josh, whatever. And it's like, dude, here's what happened, dude. That was a weapons depot. It was a shipping station going right into Syria. And everybody knew, the bad guys knew, we have one good attack, maybe kill an ambassador. They're going to shut that down like forever. And they did. And that's exactly what happened. And the fact that an analyst couldn't see that coming is absolute. If you are there on the ground, knowing what's going on, that has to enter into your risk analysis, right? It's not like
not only that, but it happened on the anniversary of 9/11.
Right.
And anybody who knows anything about Islamic terrorist organizations
their holidays.
They love their anniversaries and their significant dates. Like, I mean, that was legit 10-course level stuff right there. But hey, man, agency didn't see that coming.
Well, one of these days on this podcast, I'll tell the story. Y'all seen Zero Dark 30, right? To me, it was unwatchable. It was unwatchable because I actually in 2003, I think, I ran into the supposed character that Jessica Chastain plays. It's based on, investigative journalists uncovered, okay, this is who it is, just based on, open records and stuff like that. It's a lady named Alfreda Bukowski. I ran into her in Afghanistan. We were turning over our sources to one of our sources to them. And this source we turned over to them because it was in their ballpark, not ours. So it was like, well, it would be great to run this, but this goes to them. This is their sandbox. And dude, I was in the room. The source wouldn't, first of all, they weren't controlling the room. We were like, okay, these are our new friends. The source wouldn't let us leave. Right. And it's like, well, he's yours now. So it's kind of on y'all to control the situation. Right. So they didn't control the room. They let us sit in there. They allowed us to sit in there while they did their stuff. And he tore her apart. She tore her apart so much that she started crying. I'm telling the story right now, but I said I'll tell it someday. But she started crying right in front of the guy. And I didn't know that was her till years later when some of the information started trickling out. It's like, oh, she was on that team since 2000, since the Cole bombing. And I was like, holy shit, she has red hair. That's her. Holy crap. I actually was in a room with her and where a source, an asset, made her cry. It was insane. And it's like, wow. So when Fob Chapman happened, I mean, that's a horrible tragedy. And you're right, Roger, that book, dude, the fact they couldn't see that coming, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Dude. That book was wild. That book was
I left there like 3 weeks prior. I was there 3 weeks prior to that out at Salerno. And then I think I was back actually at home on leave coming back. And then that happened. So I was like, yeah, obviously it's believable because it did happen, but yeah, not everybody just because they've got a 3-letter agency or even us, is all that they're cracked up to be, right? For the common person that doesn't do this every day, it's like, oh man, they're, whatever. It's like, you know what? Just like any other field out there, any other job out there, so you got some good ones, you got some bad ones.
I was just had some stuff pulled up on Fob Chapman and, Benghazi and all that stuff. And something came to mind of when we got bin Laden, right? Remember that? And Obama comes out there. It's a good feeling, even though it's Obama administration. It's like, hey, man, all right, we got him, right? And one of the first things that goes through our heads is like, okay, who was it? was it Delta or was it SEAL Team 6? It's like, who was it? And y'all probably knew. The minute I knew who it was when I saw a helicopter crashed. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was SEAL Team 6. 100%. 100% that was SEAL Team 6. And it was. I was like, oh, yeah. And Darren's going to be like, oh, Luke shitting on the SEALs again. But Darren loves SEALs. But, and whatever.
It's as soon as it happened, I was in Long Island. I was on a mission in Long Island, and I think it was Charles or something like that. He's like, "Hey, turn on your TV," right? And so I turned it on. Saw Obama come out and say we killed Bin Laden. I was like, "Dude, this is amazing." Right. And you see everybody like partying in DC, people gathered outside the White House to, party and chant USA. You're like, dude, I this is awesome. And, but I kind of had that question. I was like, I wonder which group of fellows was it? And, so I texted a couple buddies and, didn't get a text back. And so I was like, hold up, who's a US SOCOM commander right now? I think it was McRaven, right? And I was like, oh yeah, that was the beach. That was the beach.
Well, they had also been they kind of threw a bunch of chips in the middle of the table by gambling that was the compound in Abbottabad. So they went ahead and they didn't know that was it, but there was pretty good indication. They're like 50-50. So they just went ahead and built a compound. I think they built it in Afghanistan, actually, mirroring what they thought it would be. And they had been rehearsing on it for like 6 months. A bunch of different teams rotating in and out. So it's like when the decision came down, it's like, well, I kind of understand why they would, because they threw their chips in. They happen to be right. They've been rehearsing this for months. Yeah. Let's send those guys.
Yeah, they built a replica of the compound here in the States
before they. Yeah. Oh well, probably in the States. It was probably in the States. Yeah.
They were also the major footprint. I mean, the other fellows were still playing in Iraq for a lot. Had seemed like a couple years before that finally came over into theater, but the bigger footprint was at that time were the SEALs on the Eastern Front.
Yeah, well, you had the Omega teams, that were already there and had been there. I mean, the Omega team had been there since day one. Right. With the guys out of 5th Group and stuff. So I mean, to Luke's point, it made sense, right? To go ahead and give it to them. They were, because it was also looked at that the other fellows they got Saddam, right? So it was like, all right, they got Saddam. These guys have already been trained. Like we'll give them a shot. And at the end of the day, it's one of those like rivalries, things kind of. But at the end of the day, it's like dude got shot in the face, and the world's better for it.
You know what? And that could have been a lot worse, because my understanding is that base was right there, and some stuff could have happened that might not have been good at all. But they're probably ready for it, though. There was probably plenty of air support up. I mean, all kinds of stuff. They've probably been okay, but I don't know. Yeah. Could have gone different. So they did handle it okay. They still crashed a freaking helicopter, dude. Come on.
Not only did they crash a helicopter, they crashed a very sensitive helicopter.
Yes, very. That ended up in China, didn't it?
It ended up somewhere over there. Yeah, it was a very, very sensitive helicopter, dude. Like that helicopter, that thing was so sensitive. Like it was news to people, and it was news to a lot of people in the military when in the aftermath of that. Some of the capabilities they had on board.
Have you guys seen that? Speaking of sensitive aircraft, have you guys seen that F-47, the 6th generation aircraft?
I saw when they first rolled it out, but I haven't seen anything since then.
That proves beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I hate it when people try to argue this with me, that the F-35 is the biggest waste of money in U.S. history. Well, it's close. It's definitely in Department of Defense history. Absolutely. The F-35 is the biggest boondoggle to ever happen. And we don't need to go into why, or how it ended up the way it is, but it's horrible. It's supposed to do everything, but it does nothing well. It's just awful. And it costs more in adjusted dollars than the Manhattan Project. The F-35. Oh,
which is
worthless. I mean,
wild.
so this F-47, I mean, I don't know. It looks pretty cool. I don't know. They've been flying this under our noses for how long now? Like it took its first test flight. I don't know. It's like 10 years ago or something. But it's designed to be the successor of the F-22. So the F-35 is going to stay around. We're stuck with that piece of crap. But
the F-35 is not going anywhere.
They can't. Well, it can't, because a part of it is made in every single state. Parts of it are made in NATO countries. Parts of it are made in countries that aren't even in NATO that signed on. Yeah, we'll buy 50 F-35s over the next 20 years, right? And part of that deal is we get to make one of the parts. We get to stimulate the economy. It was a total boondoggle. So for it to go away, every state's going to lose money. Every state's going to lose jobs. It is absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
And there's 50.
You know how much the F-35 cost? Like how much the R&D and acquisition?
I've seen estimates, but go ahead.
So they don't give a specific number for just the R&D and building and, setbacks. So to get the roll the first one out the door, you're well over $1 trillion.
Yeah, $1 trillion.
$1 trillion.
Well,
and now they're saying to sustain your current force with that is going to be a total of over $2 trillion, which, okay, that's the estimate, which means we're probably at $3.5 trillion.
Yeah, because the Manhattan Project in adjusted dollars didn't even come close to $1 trillion. It was in the hundreds of billions in adjusted dollars. Right. But oh my God, $1 trillion.
We need to get in the business of making F-35 parts, huh?
So, Josh, let me ask you this. Let's get into a discussion here.
I'll start 3D printing right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably what they're made out of. You know what it is? It's the Fiero version of an aircraft. Remember the Fiero?
Yeah, I like the Fiero.
It was a piece of crap car though, because it was modular. Everything could snap in and out. There were you didn't really.
I like to think it was kind of like. I like to think the F-35 was kind of like the Yugo of jets.
Yeah, Yugo Fiero hybrid. Yeah, of jets. So Josh, this is another argument. Enough. I'm glad, if anybody wants to, because I guarantee if my brother-in-law listened, he would, because he used to test fly F-35s. So he's going to defend that till he dies. But so Josh, another argument I get into is estimating what military parity looks like between China and the US. And when I see videos of the new Chinese 6th generation fighter, I almost fall out of my chair laughing, because it's like that thing is barely airworthy.
Yeah.
Like the J-36, it's a piece of garbage. It looks horrible. Yeah. It looks like it's about to, it just looks stupid. So I don't know, man. I know that China's got some trump cards to play, but my point with China, and maybe you talk me out of it today, is that in modern history, China has ripped everything off. They have very, very little innovation in China. Very little. They just rip it off, put their own little spin on it, and that's that. But I get into these discussions with people like, oh no, you don't understand China. Oh no, they're aircraft carriers, all this stuff. It's like, well, do they have a blue water navy? Do they really even have one? They're building more aircraft carriers. It's like, yeah, but I just don't know. What is your take on military parity between China and the U.S.?
So when I look at military parity, it comes down to capability versus capacity, right? Is China going to have the same amount of ships that we have? Is China going to have the same amount of carriers, aircraft, tanks, guns, you name it? Yes. We're going to quickly get to a point where they're going to have the same number of aircrafts. They're going to have just as many fighter jets, as we have. But when you start looking at, like you said, when you start looking at capability, that's where, the daylight's going to be, right? As much as we just poo-pooed on the F-35, dude, the F-35 would absolutely destroy every single one of China's, 6th gen fighters, and it wouldn't even need to try, right? I mean, we still have F-15s, and F-16s that would destroy China's 6th generation fighters. And when it comes to the Blue Water Navy, China does not have a Blue Water Navy that can stand up to, two carrier strike groups of ours, but you're not going to be able to do it from a capability standpoint. The problem with all of that, though, with all that capability that we have, the problem is going to be not with the Chinese military. The problem is going to be from the insider threat, where all of those Chinese co-opted individuals are sitting inside our defense industrial base, our critical infrastructure, and everything else that comes along with that, because they are going to start flipping switches and things are going to stop working, right? It's things that we absolutely have to have in a fight are going to stop working. And that is where, the real concern should be, when we look at military parity with China, it shouldn't be, China's tanks, right? China has, just as many tanks as we do. And it's like that tank can't kill anything, more than a mile away from it, right? The Abrams can kill something, from 5 miles away while it's moving at 70 miles an hour. And oh, by the way, that thing weighs 30 plus tons. Or no, it weighs more than that. Wait, I forget how many tons that thing weighs, right? But it can drive 70 miles an hour and it can kill things while it's moving, right? China's tanks can't do that. So hey, bring the tanks on, right? You can just have just as many as we can. We'll just kill more. And of note, talking about killing tanks, the Air Force, I think it's finally gone through. If not, it's very close. But they are finally retiring the A-10, which I think is an absolute terrible idea. If there is ever an aircraft that we should keep, that and the B-52, right? The A-10 should be one of them. So anyways, it's kind of my opinion on the Chinese, parity. I think they'll have parity in capacity. I don't think they'll have parity in capability. They're just not.
So what
there
is,
yet.
and real quick on the A-10, and you may not know this, I don't know it. So they're retiring the A-10. So what does that mean? And I ask because you got the Boneyard down in Tucson, so you've got a lot of older planes out there. They wrap them up. They kind of go to a depot, but they don't necessarily take them apart. Does that just mean they don't provide current support, don't make current parts? They're just not flying right now. Either one of I mean, like, what does that mean when they say, hey, they're going to
So
decommission or
supposedly they're phasing them out by 2029. So by 2029, they'll
something replaced with what though? Or do we know?
I haven't seen anything
Yeah.
that says they're going to replace with, but that was where it goes back to the F-35 conversation, because the Air Force leadership is saying that the F-35 can do what the A-10 does. Right? Again, basically the F-35 is like Luke said, it's a Swiss Army. They tried to make a Swiss Army knife. Right? You're like, hey man, I need something that does this one thing very well. Right? This thing does one thing very well. I don't need a Swiss Army knife, because when you start making Swiss Army knives, especially when you talk weapon systems, it's like it doesn't do one thing well. It does 10 things mediocre.
So
right?
It's kind of like me.
The idea as far as replacing it, yeah, I've heard the F-35 thing can do everything. Whatever, maybe not. But one of the things I've seen is they're looking at. Are y'all familiar with what a Super Tucano is? It's a prop plane.
Mm-mm.
It's a close air support prop plane. They're looking at versions of what's it called? It's a Super Tucano. I can't remember the nomenclature of it. A29 Super Tucano. You can load that thing up with so much firepower, but it doesn't have the cool gun on the front that's 21 feet long. The Gatling cannon that fires DU rounds. I mean, you're not going to have. It's not as cool, and that's part of the thing with the A-10. Shouldn't we have some cool stuff in our arsenal? Like the A-10 is just cool. I mean, the Russians had a name for it. It was called the Cross of Death or something like that. Because when it's flying and it does that peel off, it looks like a cross. But
It's the
yeah,
old Brazilian turboprop.
yeah.
I
They're
love
looking
it.
at a version of that. It's not the Super Tucano, but it
Mhm.
does, like the Colombians use it against the FARC, and it does provide pretty good close air support because you get a lot lower. You can fly at much lower speeds. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good airframe, but again, dude, I don't know. The A10 is just cool. That's all there is to it. It's
Is the Tucano going to have a shark's mouth painted on it?
You could. I have seen. Well, it's not the
It should
shark
be
stuff.
factory
You
default. Yeah.
remember like those old World War II, the Mustangs where they had the
Yeah.
the mouth on the front. Yeah, some of the Colombian Super Tucanos have those painted on the sides.
Okay.
That's pretty
'Cause that was
cool.
one of the coolest thing about the A10s is, especially the ones that you saw like had the shark's mouth painted on them. You're like, heck yeah, man, it's badass. I
As
would be curious about the durability of the Tucano. Um, because I mean, there was plenty of, especially during even
mm,
Desert Storm, there was pictures of A10s coming back that were shot up bad,
mhm.
and dude, they were still flying. Because again, they didn't build an aircraft and put a gun on it. They were like, we have this really big gun, we need to do something with it, and they're like, we're going to build an aircraft around it.
And that's the coolest, most American thing ever.
Yes, yes.
And if you've never heard the
Yeah.
sound of that thing, man, the sound of that thing is one of the coolest sounds. Followed a distant second is a Spectre AC-130.
Oh,
Listen to that
oh.
thing go off but man, that you can't replicate it. The brrr of it's a giant sky fart. It's like God is farting in the sky, and it's just the coolest sound ever, man. God, I love that plane.
Yeah. It's yeah, I don't know, and they talk about the cost of maintenance because it's so old. It's like, do we still have B-52s that are flying? What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
and the F-15 is older than me. The F-15 came out in 1972.
Dude, so my brother-in-law and I were in Kentucky, hitting the Bourbon Trail, and we stopped in Lexington. There's an aviation, the Kentucky Aviation Museum is there at the airport in Lexington, and so he's a pilot. And I was like, yeah, man, let's go check it out. It's got some cool stuff in there. And they had an F-15 in there, and I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. And then I was reading the big placard by it and stuff like that. And it was like, yes, this historical piece was flying sorties in Iraq in 2005, and I was just like, I feel attacked. I feel attacked. I was like, this thing was in Iraq the same year I was, and it's in a museum now.
Another cool
like,
aircraft.
so
Another cool aircraft was the SR-71, dude.
the
Oh,
Blackbird,
Blackbird,
oh my gosh.
I don't know that we can speak about aircraft right now, and F-14s and stuff and F-15s and everything without mentioning Val
No.
Kilmer died.
Yeah.
Iceman's gone.
He had 10 in Top Gun, right? It's obviously the thing that set off his career, arguably. I don't know. I think Tombstone, he'll be remembered again, but you can't, like Val Kilmer, Top Gun, Tombstone, right? But you realize, as far as like good actors, right? How much screen time? Let me just ask you guys, how much screen time do you think he got in Top Gun? Josh?
Less than 15 minutes.
Roger?
Yeah, I'd say 20, 25 minutes.
10 minutes. He had 10 minutes of screen time in Top Gun, and everyone remembers Iceman. It was all Maverick and Goose and all that stuff, but with 10 minutes of screen time, that guy was, just amazing. And then, and then when he appeared in Top Gun Maverick, man, I mean, holy cow. I thought I was going to lose
the
it.
way they I love the way they did that, right? It was so good how they, one, I thought Top Gun Maverick was fantastic. It was like, okay. And yeah, go off on a little bit of a tangent, but it was so good to go to the movie theater, sit down, watch a movie, Americana, no woke, nothing, no way. It was just, man, we are the United States. We're gonna fly fighter jets. We're gonna blow stuff up, and then we're gonna go drink some beers. It was like, dude, this is great. And the way
You didn't
they
get that out of
closed
Snow White?
it's and in the way they closed out, the storylines right? It was like, okay, they had, Goose's son and Rooster and everything, but when they brought Val Kilmer back in and they, worked his throat cancer and everything in with it and everything, I was like, dude, this is so good, man. This is so they did it justice. They did him right. It was so good. I am really glad they did not bring Kelly McGillis back.
Oh God!
That would have been very
that would not
disappointing.
have fit.
She looks like Medusa from The Little Mermaid now. She did not age well. She did not age
Ursula.
well.
How do I know that?
Ursula. Yeah, Ursula.
I'll tell you how I know Little Mermaid so well. Talk about tangents. So one of my first job where I got, a W-2 was at a big box toy store, kind of like a Toys R Us. It was called Children's Palace, big toy store. Dude, that was an awesome job, right? I, got to play with remote control cars. It was just ride bikes around this giant toy store after they closed. It was fun. And you got to see all the toys coming out, G.I. Joes and everything. But the bad part was sometimes you had to work in the Disney section, restocking that. And that was back when I worked there, was when The Little Mermaid came out on VHS. And they had The Little Mermaid playing on loop in the Disney section. So I'd be on a 6-hour shift and, listen to The Little Mermaid probably 2 or 3, 4 times. And yeah, so that's how I know Little Mermaid so well. Nobody would want to hear it, but I could quote all those songs for sure. I could probably quote the whole movie.
Yeah.
How do we go? Okay, so back to Val Kilmer. So Roger, besides Top Gun and Tombstone, do any of other Val Kilmer performances stick out to you? Josh,
Real Genius. You got Batman. You got the Cold Fusion movie. What was surprising to me, I think it was your mom when we were down in Tombstone. She brought up the Netflix documentary because I didn't know any history of Val Kilmer. I figured he was kind of, and maybe this is speaking out of turn, but like you get a lot of your famous actors are just kind of found at the mall, like Britney Spears, and they have a good hit and they just kind of go off. Like that dude was a dedicated actor who that was a trade for him. When you look at his, like, I had no idea he'd gone through all that schooling and all that type of training. Like this dude had as many hours, if not more than that, than we did in our skill set, right. In the military. So it's, I think it's on Netflix. I think it's called Kilmer, but
Val,
or maybe it's Val.
Yeah.
Val. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, your mom told us to watch it. I think my wife and I watched it a couple months after we left. And I was like, wow, man, this guy, this was a professional, job for him. Like not, he just didn't stumble upon it and, hey, I'm going to go out and throw a couple movies or whatever. I mean, this is what he did for a living. So pretty amazing. If you, Ghost in the Darkness. Yeah. So you go back and you look up like his IMDb. I mean, he's got a lot of movies in there, man.
Yeah. Cause he went to Juilliard, didn't he?
Juilliard. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Which I didn't even know that until the documentary.
Yeah. Now he was man, he was, the guy was a professional, he was a master of his craft, and man, dude, I was, talking to
The Doors
tonight too.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't think off the top of my head, right? When I saw that he had passed away, you automatically like, man, all the good movies he did. I did not recall one movie where I was like, he was terrible in that movie. Not one.
There was one where there was one movie where he seemed like he did not want to be there. And that was The Island of Dr. Moreau. And I watch a lot of, there's a guy on YouTube, The Critical Drinker. He does, movie reviews and stuff. He's a Scottish guy. He acts like he's drunk when he gives the reviews, but he's really good. And one of the videos he'll put out is Production Hell. And he talks about how difficult it was to produce some movies. And one of those was Island of Dr. Moreau. Because what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. Come on. The Godfather, Marlon Brando. He was Dr. Moreau. And Val Kilmer was so put out by the way Marlon Brando was acting that he almost walked away from it like 4 or 5 times because he just couldn't take it. He's like, this guy is not taking this seriously. He's morbidly obese. He forgets his lines. He doesn't even know the lines. He doesn't know what the movie's about. So if you go back and watch The Island of Dr. Moreau and just look at Kilmer's performance, it's like he doesn't want to be there, and I think that's due to Marlon Brando. But you're right. I mean, that would be the only exception. I don't think he did horrible. I just think it was just a poorly produced movie.
Yeah, the movie was bad, but not because of him.
No, exactly.
Brando has that reputation. right? I mean, Apocalypse. You go back and you read all all the issues and stuff they had on filming Apocalypse Now. A lot of it was because Brando's behavior was just wild. You know, dude wouldn't show up. Dude showed up. He was off his gourd drunk. And just combative. He's just, and then people were getting people, they were filming in the jungle, sure, right? So people get malaria, and so it was just
So talk about heat though. Talk about heat.
Dude, Heat, right? I mean, that's another one. I mean, dude, that movie is fantastic. And Val Kilmer did one, and I still tell people to this day, because people are like, oh, well, does that weapon do this? Is that realistic? But it's like, you want to watch a realistic gunfight, dude, watch Heat. Right, watch Heat, because they actually did it the right way. Dudes are reloading. It's not the Magic magazine that you shoot. You shot 1,000 rounds out of. Without ever changing mags. Their tactics were pretty on point. And Val Kilmer was fantastic in Heat. All of them were. Pacino, as much as he's all right. De Niro, as much as I dislike De Niro, these days politically, like, the Heat was just, God, it was such a great movie. Val Kilmer was right there. You're making it good. Yeah, man, he was good.
So, and this will be the contentious point here, and it's just, a lot of this stuff is a matter of opinion and taste, right?
Sure.
So when I was like, hey, I don't like the band Rush. Well, you don't have any taste to me. I just don't like them, dude. Okay, I just don't like them. So my preference, we're talking about Doc Holliday, right? I think Val Kilmer killed it with Doc Holliday. It was awesome. But
yeah.
I prefer Quaid's portrayal of Doc Holliday in the Kevin Costner Wyatt Earp. I think that, yes, Doc Holliday, Val Kilmer's was great. It was an awesome performance. I love watching it to this day. But when I think of Doc Holliday, I think of more Dennis Quaid's portrayal of him in the movie Wyatt Earp. Just a lunger, a guy with tuberculosis, very few redeeming qualities, but still there for his friends. And, so I'll leave that alone. People are going to hate on me for that. But, two of Val Kilmer's biggest things is, the final scene in Tombstone with Doc Holliday, where he goes to his deathbed,
Yeah.
kind of gets choked up a little bit, but also the scene in Heat when he goes back to pick up his wife and the cops are there, and she gives him the little signal, because he's smiling and he's like, I'm here. And then she gives him the signal, the very subtle signal, and you just see his face. I mean, that's acting.
Yeah.
And you kind of get not choked up, but you're like, oh, that sucks. And a great actor, man. I mean, that's what a great actor can do. So all those hours at Juilliard, I guess, paid off for Val. Real genius.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point when you talk about Doc Holliday and his portrayal in it. I mean, that's what made that character, right? And I don't know enough about Doc Holliday other than what we've all, run into out here being in Arizona, but it's the Wyatt Earp, maybe a probably more historical accurate portrayal, but Val Kilmer, man, I mean, he made that character his own and made you want to like him. It goes back to that, you tie it back to like wrestling. It's that Stone Cold Steve Austin badass. I'm gonna do what I got to do, or whatever I want to do. Screw the man, but I'm also really good at what I do, right? He's got that attitude, and he made that character, a part of him. I mean, he made that character part of the movie. Like, you wanted to, part of it outside of the tuberculosis. You're like, man, I want to be that dude. That dude is super cool.
Yeah.
So,
and we've spent.
And now when he died, he died of throat cancer. I never even saw the cause.
He died of pneumonia. He died of
Which
pneumonia.
is brought on by all the cancer. So we've spent an hour and a half. We got to touch on two things, I think. Tariffs and then the JFK stuff.
Oh, good Lord.
So, yeah. With JFK, and you guys may not want to talk about JFK, but I heard a compelling argument against it being a conspiracy, which was the timeline of the assassin, the timeline. Because when that dude, he went to Mexico City to try to defect to Cuba. That he did. Now that was something like 7 days before, like when he was crossing the border, he crossed, I think, in Laredo, Oswald. He crossed in Laredo, and that point was when it was announced where Kennedy was going to be in Dallas. When he was he knew at that point Kennedy was going to be in Dallas, but he still tried to go and defect to Cuba. Now, in that short time frame, it was like less than 7 days. In that short time frame, you're telling me that they recruited him to go to Dallas and shoot. Back then, they would post where the president was going to be and the exact locations of the motorcade and everything. It's like, I don't know. That's a pretty compelling thing. It's like, okay, maybe that could happen, but I don't know. So, Josh, more than one shooter or not?
I don't think there was more than one shooter, but here's the problem with your theory. James Jesus Angleton, who was an OSS man, became director of counterintelligence for the agency. Guess who he had a relationship with before he tried to cross the border into Laredo 7 days prior to him killing John F. Kennedy?
Yeah.
He had a relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, riddle me this, Batman. Why did the then director of counterintelligence for the CIA, who ran in circles with, the chief of the Mossad, who ran in circles with, the likes of J. Edgar Hoover, who ran in circles of the powerful elite in DC and the country, why did he have a relationship? Why did he have any connective tissue to somebody like Lee Harvey Oswald?
Well, hey, look, I'm not saying you're wrong, and maybe that's right.
No, I'm not saying you're wrong either.
Did Angleton convince him to do that? I don't know. But to me, it's like Occam's razor on this. When we're talking about Angleton having a relationship, and then he crosses the border to go down to Mexico City to try, and he actually, Cubans denied him and everything. I think Angleton's aim, Occam's razor, was, hey, why don't you go try to defect to Cuba? Because now we're going to have a guy on the inside, a little loose cannon. Maybe we could assassinate Fidel Castro. Maybe this is another way we could try again. Because Cuba, I don't know. Here's the thing. I told Jeremy this, our listener Jeremy, because they're going to declassify the JFK files. I think one of the reasons that they're not declassifying everything is because it's just embarrassing. There's probably something stupid, like the FBI actually had knowledge, maybe 2 or 3 hours, maybe a day or two before, that he was going to do something like this. And they had him under surveillance, and we all know how surveillance works, and they just lost him. And the next thing you know, the president's getting his head blown off, JFK. It's just embarrassing. I said, it's going to be something stupid like that. So, hey, is it possible? I don't know. I don't know. Angleton, I don't know. I do know Angleton had his hands in everything. I do know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's three things, a couple of things that came out, with these files, right? Angleton, they proved that Angleton lied to the Warren Commission, about a couple of things, right? One of the big things with the Warren Commission, then later the Church Commission, was the fact that, Angleton was basically doing mail covers on, everybody he could get his hands on, right? To get dirt. He was reading everybody's mail. He's told the Warren Commission that he had no knowledge of Lee Harvey Oswald prior to, him turning Kennedy's head into a canoe.
But do you think that...
that was a flat out lie.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that was a lie, because Angleton started reading Oswald's mail, because Oswald defected to the Soviet Union in a couple of years before he killed Kennedy, right? And he came back.
And they kicked his ass out.
Yeah, the Soviet Union was like, get this crazy dude out of here. And so, because I think the Soviet Union at the time, whoever it was, Khrushchev, whoever, was like, this guy's a provocation. Like, get him out of here. Like, there's no way he's doing this of his own, own accord. But it just, after I read the book, The Ghost, it was, it was not a flattering, portrayal of Angleton at all. And Yep. Yeah, you got up there. It further convinced me that there was some folks in DC that had their hands in killing John F. Kennedy.
I just, I'm not saying you're wrong, and poor Roger didn't talk at all, but not saying you're wrong. It's just, embarrassment is a big thing, right?
Sure.
Embarrassment means you're going to lose funding. Embarrassment means you're going to have a lot of scrutiny. So the embarrassment of, hold on, you knew who this guy was and you were working with him? Like, I think, again, the simplest explanation in my mind is that they were just trying to avoid embarrassment. I think it was the perfect storm of just a crazy dude. And I agree with you. I think there's only one shooter, regardless of what Joe Rogan says, ballistics experts and all this. It's all nonsense. But, well, not all nonsense. There are some weird things. But there are weird things in ballistics. Man, ballistics are strange. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. Roger, what do you think?
I don't think it matters. The reality is that stuff is so old that anything that was damning, and I say that because anything that was damning to the U.S. government, if there was anything, has been destroyed, long gone. And they can declassify whatever. This happened, in 63? So, 62 years ago, dude, any shred of evidence, was there a lot of motivation or a lot of motives to assassinate Kennedy? Yeah. Look at what Eisenhower said in his, farewell address about the military industrial complex. And you look at the Bay of Pigs and you look at the cut of the CIA funding. I mean, there were a lot of motives. And you look at, granted years ago, but look at what the Democrat Party has tried to do to Trump over the last 8 years. So can you say, hey, you go above and beyond and say, oh, these people wouldn't try to assassinate the president? I believe it's one shooter. But outside of that, we'll never know. And there's no reason that we should have had this stuff classified as long as it has been. I mean, I get you protect sources and methods and this and that, but what were we actually protecting about that? I know the House had a committee on it. I don't know, what was it, like in 69 or 71 or something like that? And they're like, no, U.S. government didn't have anything to do with it. It's like, okay, that's great. Well, not that I trust what the House comes out and says, but it's like anything that was in there. They've had decades now to shred any bit of evidence, if there was any, that had some government official had a hand in it. Whatever evidence was there, if there was any, has been long gone. So,
and Josh,
at this point, it don't even matter.
Josh put in a good point about the other thing that doesn't make sense is Jack Ruby killing Oswald immediately afterwards, and Angleton having connections with the mafia, which they did. And U.S. government, going back to the OSS days, had the mob was protecting the ports, in the United States on behalf of the U.S. government. But again, I go back to this. I go back to the embarrassment aspect, because if Oswald would have remained living, he probably would have spilled the beans. Well, I have connections with the CIA. I'm just all this stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's like, now with the connections with the mafia, to avoid embarrassment, it's not Angleton who's going directly to Jack Ruby. His name was Jacob Leon Rubenstein, by the way. But it was him going to the mafia boss and said, hey, this guy's got to get killed. The mafia boss is going to Jack Ruby and saying, hey, you got to go kill this dude. Now, who is Jack Ruby going to roll over on first? James Jesus Angleton or the mafia bosses? They're never going to roll over on the mafia bosses. So it's like, it's pretty good, right? It's I mean, I think Angleton, I think he was definitely involved. I think he was definitely involved in killing Oswald. 100%. 100% Angleton engineered that. The question is why. We can talk about it and theorize. I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just like,
Yeah, I just go back. The other thing that came out with this, with this drop, and Roger's correct. We're never going to know, and it's not even an embarrassment piece at this point. It's we just don't want to let it out because it is going to be, like you said, it's going to be a funding, because most of the people involved, they're all dead. Right? I mean, they are, most everybody on the Warren Commission is dead. I mean, everybody that was involved with it, director of the CIA at the time, Helms, guess what? That dude's dead as Dillinger. Angleton's dead. Like, everybody's dead. right? So there's really zero reason other than, hey, this agency needs to needs to pony up some some funding, or get shut down or whatever, which ain't going to happen either. That's what it is. But even Dick Helms came out and was like, no, we had no knowledge, or we had limited knowledge of who Oswald even was, at the time of the assassination, which is not true based on the documents that just dropped. There was a CIA program that was funding a bunch of anti-Castro pushes and anti-Castro student groups, and they saying kind of one of those things is, obviously JFK was very anti-Castro, and Oswald was very pro-Castro. He was pro-communism, and so, but it doesn't, it goes back to, it doesn't make sense that Oswald, to me, it doesn't make sense that Oswald acted on his own, right? When he has, he's known and he has relationships, he's met and had coffee with the director of counterintelligence for the CIA. Like that's wild to me. And then he gets killed right immediately after by the mob, right? It's just, it's too much. If you would have asked me in the mid 90s or the late 90s, hey, do you think the U.S. government, participated in or had knowledge of, the assassination of, then sitting president, I'd have been like, no, you're crazy. The U.S. government would never do that. We would never do that. And then, you're around, you see some things, you learn some things, and you're like, hey, would the U.S. government would people inside the U.S. government ever participate in the assassination of either a sitting president or a former president? You're like, yeah, absolutely. I believe that in a heartbeat. Right? Am I wrong?
Yeah. No,
So,
you're right.
Well, and then you look at the historical context. I mean, hey, MK Ultra, MK Naomi, Operation North. I mean, dude, there's a lot of things that have come out during Northwoods that came out during that time frame that you're like, they were involved in some pretty shady stuff, dude.
Guys, it's not that far fetched, man. It is not that far fetched, people. I'm telling you right now. Those those rose colored glasses, you might want to just take those babies off. Just go ahead and drop them off at the thrift store, because
I just saw a great fake Pete Hegseth tweet, and I had to go research it real quick to see if he really tweeted this or X'd it, whatever you want to say, but it's fake. I wish it was real. Listen to this. It would be awesome, right? Effective immediately, all staff NCOs and above with 15 plus years time in service and no combat deployment ribbon, OEF, OIF, must give a PowerPoint brief the last Friday of every month, seasonal service uniform required, titled How I Dodged 2 Wars and Still Made E8, Q&A mandatory.
Oh, I love it.
But it's fake. So tariffs, Roger.
Come on, man. Picking on those recruiters, dude. Come on.
Tariffs, Roger. Come on. What's going on? Is this a bad move? It seems like a bad move. Ben Shapiro thinks it's a bad move.
I'm actually kind of surprised that there are so many people that are jumping on the one. I don't understand how many people support other countries raping the U.S. They've been raping the U.S., right? So, and we can boil this down very, very simple. At the end of the day, what Trump did was, hey, reciprocal tariffs, and they weren't even reciprocal to an extent. For the most part, it was like, hey, Australia or Japan or whatever country, if you're going to tariff our goods 25%, then we're going to tariff yours 25%. And a lot of times it wasn't even that; it was a 10%, right? So, hey, that's just what it is. You're going to charge more money for our goods. We're going to charge more money for your goods. That's just the way it is until it's even. So you actually have fair trade. He was also looking at barriers to entry. So, like a lot of places like Australia, which I actually don't think they have a very high tariff on U.S. goods, but they don't allow the sale of U.S. beef out there, right? So they're preventing U.S. businesses from operating there. So he's just like, hey, man, if this is what you're going to do, this is what we're going to do. And I think we are the globe's, for most countries, the largest consumer. So I love it. I love every second of it. And it's that we talked about this during our early COVID episode, where you have to have a significant emotional event And COVID was that. And we thought we missed the boat on it to bring manufacturing back to the United States, that type of stuff. This is what he's doing. This is what's going on. And I think, long story short, what he's doing for the long term is way better for the country. I think the people that you look at that are really, really concerned about it are politicians who have to be concerned about short-term results because they're career politicians and they have to worry about elections every 2 years or 4 years or 6 years. Are there going to be some hiccups and bumps in the road? Absolutely. There's going to be some, but the other thing is tariffs aren't end all be all. Like, have they learned nothing? And this is why they're all grifters, especially on the left, man. They're all grifters. Like, you learn nothing from Trump. It's a negotiating tool. Okay. This is what it is. Canada's already come back, and I'm not going to go through this. We could probably post it or something like that. But, I pulled out the Wall Street Journal a couple hours ago, what the global response has been to the tariffs, and you've got Australia already coming back saying, we're going to negotiate with the U.S. to remove the tariffs. You look at what Canada said, we'll drop all tariffs if the U.S. drops all tariffs, which is great because Canada was charging us anyway. India, no plans to retaliate. It would look for opportunities, from U.S. tariffs. Same thing with Malaysia, Mexico, Singapore. You have people that are finally coming to the table. And it doesn't mean that, hey, it's 10% end all be all, and this is just the way it's going to be. It's a negotiating start. Now, if you get deeper into this, and I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, we have 9, and this is what I think the true play. So there's twofold. Okay. I think there's one, trade balance. We've been getting raped, and it's amazing how many Democrats and even a lot of Republicans are fine with that. They're fine with the rest of the world charging an extra 25, 30% for our goods, and us forcing us to buy cheap Chinese goods. The other side to this is we have $9 trillion in federal debt that has to be refinanced this year because we can't pay it, right? We don't have enough revenue to pay that. And you are at the mercy of current interest rates. And so I think there is a back piece to this, which is working, because if you look at the 10-year yield, it's dropped. Okay. And that's what the Fed will use to determine what the interest rates are. So I do think there is another play there. One, we want fair trade. And I think there is a play to, hey, if we can get interest rates to drop 2 or 3 points here over the next couple months, or next 6 months or what have you, refinance that $9 trillion in debt, you're probably going to save $3 trillion in the long run. So I don't have a problem with it. I like it. It's a negotiating tool. He could lift them tomorrow. I think the U.S. didn't the House just vote the other day about lifting the Canadian tariffs or whatever. But outside of that, I'm just shocked. I'll ask you, Josh. What do you think? I am shocked at how many people come out on the left and the right and actually support the rest of the world tariffing our stuff, but say, well, we shouldn't do that to everybody else. Like, that's what MAGA is all about. That's why people love MAGA. It's like Make America Great Again, America First agenda. Like, I don't understand how hard that is to comprehend.
Well, it's surprising, but at the end of the day, when you just, think about it for a second, it's not surprising. What have we done for the last 25 years, right? We've educated people. We've, pounded people with propaganda about how America is the great Satan. We're an evil country and we have so much, we have, so many riches and stuff like that. We should be sharing with everybody, right? We're not sharing with everybody. What are we doing? That's, that's bad. That's not the teachings of, Jesus Christ, and everything. So it's surprising, but in the same breath, it's not surprising, and this goes back, and I know, Luke, if Luke was sitting in his chair right now, he would roll his eyes out loud. But this goes back, dude. I don't see I don't see any outcome in this country other than civil war, right? And I'm gonna make a Sarah Adams assessment, right? I'm gonna make a Sarah Adams assessment. There is going to be civil war, all right? It might be 1,000 years from now, but there's going to be one. There is no, you're right. So there's no middle. There's no middle ground. There is no common ground. You look at, I forget where it was. I want to say it was in Minnesota or Wisconsin. The Democrats walked out of the state chamber instead of negotiating with the other side of the aisle on a bill. They all just walked out. And so it's like, okay, I don't have anything in common with the people on the left. The people on the left who want to, destroy America, who want to, allow open borders, who want to take away my, my right to, defend myself and my family, people who want to trans kids. I don't have anything in common with them. They don't have anything in common with us. They don't believe in the nuclear family. They don't believe that we should put America first before we take care of any other country, which is nuts because you can't take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself first, right? And so I there's no common ground for us to even start negotiating those commonalities with. It's just there's none. And so I don't I don't see stuff like this getting any better. People are going to continue. The left's going to continue to denigrate the United States. You brought up a great point. Is even some of those Republicans are like, dude, I'm coming up for election. Either at the midterms, like the economy's got to be good, got to be strong because I back. I hitch my cart to Trump. And all people are going to see is that their 401ks are way down, and it's my fault, right? So I've got to come out, and now I've got to kind of oppose this a little bit and push back a little bit because I've got to get elected back to office. It goes back to 2008, 2009 with Bush and us bailing out the banks. That was the dumbest thing. That was one of the dumbest things, domestic policy, that he did. Right? It would have hurt, man. It would have hurt if he did not bail out the banks, bro. It would have stung, right? But we would have been way better off,
Oh yeah.
for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Much better off had we done that, but we just decided to put a Band-Aid on that arterial bleed and, all right, we're just gonna, do this. And so Trump's doing what Bush should have done, back then in the way of, hey, this is going to be really painful for a little while, but we're going to be better off in the long term down the road. So giddy up. Let's go. Everybody buckle up because we're going.
Quick question. So if we go down the Civil War, I've got my own theory, but which side fires the first shot? Is it the left or the right?
Oh, the left.
Still just the left.
You think so?
Yes.
I don't think the left's the one who fires the first shot. I think it's the right.
Dude,
could be. Depends on what
I think we get so. I think that some of the will get so fed up with it of them taking our rights away and abusing us and abusing the courts. Dude, you just get people that go nuts. I could be wrong. Just
I don't know. I hear you. I just think it's going to be the left. They're far more violent and reactionary than the right, except for January 6th, maybe. But
just look at the left right now, what they're doing to every Tesla they see.
Good jeez.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like skirmish. I'm talking like actual like, hey, somebody's going to start. And again, I don't, like a flashpoint or whatever, but like, you're talking about Boston Tea Party type stuff. Like, where does that start?
Yeah, I still think it starts with the left. I still think it starts with the left because, geez, now we're going down the Civil War route. Oh my goodness. But I could see it being something similar to, Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated by, Princip, and not that this would start it, but like, 20 years from now or something, there's an Elon Musk-ish type figure, or maybe Elon Musk is still alive and he's done so much and all this stuff. And, they're about to take off for Mars in 3 years or whatever. And someone assassinates him because of his political leanings. That will be somebody on the left. And
yeah, I can see that.
I don't know. It's all theory and conjecture.
I can see that.
But, you go back to, I still want to talk about the tariffs and stuff. And we're coming up on time here. But it's like, Josh, with the, Bush bailing out the banks in 2007, 2008, 2009, you talk about Civil War. What do we always say? Civil War is only is 5 missed meals away, right? There would have been a lot of people missing meals if there hadn't been a bailout. And maybe that's what causes the Civil War. And it won't be right versus left. It'll be more like a Occupy Wall Street type thing where there were right and left, looking to overthrow the current system. I could see it being something like that. Because you look at Occupy Wall Street and where some of those people are now who are at the forefront of Occupy Wall Street, they're on the left and the right. So I could see it being something like that. I don't know. So with tariffs, I do know this, is that prices will go up. I do know that. I agree with Roger. I think it's a negotiating tool, and with the stupid chart that Trump pulled out, which is not accurate. That chart is not accurate.
No.
But like Roger said, though, it's like China, it's like 66 or something. But Trump even said it himself, but we're giving them a 50% rebate, so it's only going to be 34%. This is all negotiating, man. All of this. And the staff is already built out for it. You've got the UCOM AOR, you've got the Southcom AOR, so stuff like that. It's all negotiating. But if some of them stay in place, some goods are going to go up. Like if the Vietnam tariffs stay up, bro, instead of paying $20 for a t-shirt, you're going to be paying $32 a t-shirt. And is what Rand Paul, and it's like, dude, fuck the fuck. Well, tariffs are effectively a tax because it raises prices. Oh, okay. But what did we say on C3 freaking 4 years ago? It's like all these COVID stimulus checks. I got one. I didn't need one. Roger didn't get one because he makes too much money. But we got one. And we said it on this podcast. This is going to cause inflation. It's not just the checks we're getting. It's the PPP loans that are going to 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's the PPP loans, all this stuff, all the people buying houses. That's why there was a housing crunch in 2021 because everyone was flush with cash because now all of a sudden you're $400,000 richer than you were before. It caused inflation. So is a stimulus a tax too? Rand Paul, you're going to walk the walk. You're going to talk the talk. You got to walk the walk too. If you're going to call tariffs a tax, you call stimulus a tax as well. We called this on this podcast. I'm very proud of it that we called this that inflation we had that we're still recovering from. We called this early on in the podcast. So it's like, whatever. We're raising prices, but we're raising tariffs, which is going to raise prices, but nobody threw a fit about the stimulus and the PPP that also we knew were going to raise prices. Oh, that's not a tax. No, that's just helping out the American people. Meanwhile, my grocery bill is $250 when it used to be $78 or $100. I don't know.
And look at what Walmart's doing. I just posted that. Walmart has actually gone back to its Chinese suppliers and you absorb the cost. You've got Ford coming out saying that they're offering, it might be in the market for a new truck now because Ford's offering employee pricing now to everybody. For their vehicles, and GM, I think, actually expanded some factories. So you're absolutely right. There will be some things that go up, especially the cheapo depot stuff, right? Like I haven't looked because I'm not on it, but I heard like Temu's getting crushed, right? That those pure Chinese, I guess it would be D2C type of thing or B2C or whatever type markets. But you look at like Walmart, if you got that buying power and those large box stores, that's what they're going to do, especially with the Walmarts. Now, maybe not the Targets because their pricing model is different. But the Walmarts are going to go back like, no, we're not absorbing this. You are.
I just wish there would be a change of consciousness, right? I really do. And I just don't know, like you guys said, the election cycle, it's every 2 years, basically. It's not enough time. But if Americans could get over it and just be like, look, I can buy this $8 set of pliers from Walmart that's made in China that's going to last me, first of all, it's crap. It's going to last me maybe 4 years. Or I can buy $15 DeWalt or whatever made in the US that's going to last me a lifetime. But Americans aren't about that, are they? Whatever. I don't know.
Well, the other problem with that is it's not pure, and it's not pure because, we talked about this before, government regulations and interference. The piece that messes this all up, labor unions. That's the other big piece to it, right? Because we could produce cheaper goods, right? But you've got labor unions that say, well, no, you've got to have 9 weeks of maternity leave, and then the husband gets another 12 weeks of paternity leave, and and all these other. Hey, you got to make
lifetime retirement. A lifetime retirement. Yeah. It ain't freaking. And so they make it impossible. Anymore. God dang it! I'm not closing out. I'm too worked up. Y'all got me too worked up. I gave my shout outs already, so I'm kicking it to Josh.
And with that, we're out of time, fellas. So, everybody, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. We say we're going to try and put out more episodes, but we're not. We're still going to put them out at the rate we're putting them out because the three of us can't get on the same sheet of music about our schedules.
We got day jobs, man.
Right? Yeah. So, Stay frosty. Keep those Canteen cups tightly secured.